joining us.
I'm going to swap the plug right now.
Okay. Oh no, I think it'll just swap for you.
Oh.
So you're good. You're good. So Guy will do background on himself, but just really briefly, how many people here use Canva? Yeah. So he's the chief evangelist at Canva, but also, right, earlier in his career, he was also the chief evangelist at Apple. And he's written many, many books in between and worked at many, many companies as well. So we're very grateful to have him here, sharing his knowledge and all of his advice with us for how to be a more remarkable leader. So thank you, Guy, for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah. So just to delve a little bit more in my checkered past, I was born and raised in Hawaii. I lived in Kalihi Valley. If you've ever gone on Likelike Highway to Kaneohe, you went right past my house. And I went to Kalihi Elementary. It's the school, the pink school on the side of the mountain there. And I left for college, and I really haven't lived here since. But, you know, you can take the guy out of Hawaii. You can't take the Hawaii out of the guy. So my son goes to the University of Hawaii right now. So finally, I have a successful kid. And I kind of look for any excuse to come to Hawaii right now. And so if you have an event and you want me to speak, I'm Guy Kawasaki at Gmail. So a little bit, tonight I hope to explain how to become a remarkable leader. I learned this not because I'm a remarkable leader, but because I have had about 40 years of exposure to remarkable leaders in Silicon Valley, including some of the current people who, shall I say, have changed their perspective in life. I'm the host of a podcast called Remarkable People, and I hope that you listen to it. My goal for Remarkable People is to interview remarkable people and help bring out their wisdom so that my audience can be remarkable too. And if you listen to my podcast, it is 90% them, 10% me. I'm not Joe Rogan. I'm not trying to dominate a conversation. I'm trying to get remarkable information out of my guests. So this presentation reflects what I learned from people that I interviewed who were remarkable leaders. This would include Jane Goodall, Stacey Abrams, Stephen Wolfram, he's a MacArthur Fellow, Angela Duckworth, Bob Cialdini, let's see, Steve Wozniak, Tony Fauci. I've had very remarkable people on my podcast. As I look back on my career, I think my podcast is the best work I've ever done. And now it's 5 years into this, so I have about 250 episodes, just 250 hours. And we transcribe every podcast because, quite frankly, I am deaf. And because I'm deaf, I truly appreciate that not everybody can listen to a podcast. So we got to make it so that people can read the podcast. And so that's 5,000 pages, 250 hours. We figured out that not everybody's going to read that or listen through that. So we wrote a book called Think Remarkable, which is based on all this. So tonight's presentation is the leadership principles that I have pulled from people, you know, like the Jane Goodalls, like the Margaret Atwoods, like the Neil deGrasse Tysons who have been on my podcast. And if you ever want even more, I built a LLM called Kawasaki GPT. And Kawasaki GPT has all my writing, all my video, all my podcasts, including my guests. So if you ever wanted to ask me a question, I promise you that Kawasaki GPT will give you a better answer than I will. I promise. In fact, let me be honest. When I need to draft a newsletter or an article or a foreword or a blurb, I go to Kawasaki GPT and I ask myself the question. And I swear, it's better at being me than me. So, you know, I could just end my speech right here. So let me begin by showing you my top 10 tips for being a remarkable leader, because you are the leaders of Hawaii, and I want Hawaii to be the greatest state possible. I truly do love Hawaii, and I can drop into deep Pidgin anytime you want if you want me to. For the longest time, I was trying to like cleanse my Pidgin. And about 2 years ago, I interviewed a linguist, and she said, Guy, you should not be ashamed of your Pidgin. You should just let it ring true. But I'm neither here nor there right now. If you're from Hawaii, in the first sentence, you can pick up I'm from Hawaii. But other than that, I fooled a lot of howleys a long time. So this is the logo of, we're going to shut the lights. This is the logo of my podcast, and this is a picture of Jane Goodall, who I consider the most remarkable living person in the world. And in this picture, she is looking for lice in my hair, just like chimpanzees. And she's about 91 years old today, and I'll tell you a funny story. I went to her birthday party. And I went up to her, I said, Jane, you know, like you travel 300 days a year. You must be tired. If you ever want a place where you can just chillax and, you know, not be in the spotlight and just hang out, we have a guest house. We live in California. We have a guest house. You can hang out there all you like. And she said, Guy, I cannot do that. I have too much work to do. This is a 91-year-old lady telling me this, and I think, oh my God, you know, that's why Jane Goodall is Jane Goodall and I'm not. But anyway, so she posed for this picture for me, and I've had her on my podcast 2 times. She's a lovely, lovely person, and the most remarkable person I know. I want to show you a 2x2 matrix that if you ever hired a highfalutin consulting firm like McKinsey or Accenture or Boston Consulting or Bain, they would charge you $5 million for this. I'm going to give it to you for free. It's a 2x2 matrix. The vertical axis measures how valuable what you do, whether it's a school, a product, a service. The horizontal axis measures how many other entities or people do the same thing, whether it's common or unique. So up here, if you do something valuable, but lots of people do it, if you make an IBM PC clone, there's 10 other manufacturers that make a PC clone, you have to compete on price. Down here, you do something that's not valuable, and lots of other stupid people do it, you're just plain dumb in that corner. In the bottom right corner, that's where you have something that only you do, but it is of no use. That's kind of sad, but at least you're unique. The upper right-hand corner is the action. So I'm telling you, this is a very good mental perspective for life, that if your school is unique and valuable, if your product is unique, if you as a person are unique and valuable, or you as a spouse is unique and valuable, you got it made. And a very good example happened in my career with iPod, because iPod was truly up in that corner, because when iPod first came out, it was the only device that had a user interface that a mere mortal could use. It could hold 1,000 songs. You could pick songs from the 6 biggest music publishers. They were only 99 cents a song, and it was all legal. And there was nothing else that could do that. That's why iPod was so successful, because it was in the upper right-hand corner. So all of this presentation is about how to put yourself and make yourself in that upper right-hand corner. So now, the first thing that I learned, and I absolutely adore this person named Carol Dweck. She's a professor of psychology at Stanford, and she is the mother of the growth mindset. The growth mindset means that you believe you can learn new skills, you can do new things, you're not set in your ways, that you can be good in one thing and learn another thing. You can be like me and take up surfing at 60 or ice hockey at 45, and you can be okay anyway. And I think it's every one of the people on my podcast who were great leaders had a growth mindset. They believe they could do new things. The opposite of a growth mindset is a fixed mindset. And a fixed mindset means you believe you cannot do new things. You don't want to take a risk. That's one form of fixed mindset that's bad. But even worse is the fixed mindset that says, I'm very good at something. I don't want to try anything else, as we say in Hawaii, because I'm going to make ass. And if I make ass, people are going to say, wow, maybe he wasn't that remarkable after all. So you might be very good in physics, but you don't want to take up surfing, right? Because you're going to make ass. Well, that's kind of sad too, because in a sense, your success is standing in your way. So that's one aspect of the growth mindset. The second aspect of the growth mindset is a protege of Carol Dweck. Her name is Mary Murphy. And what she pointed out to Carol Dweck is that a growth mindset or a fixed mindset is in your head. You know, people have an orientation, fixed or growth. But that's not the only factor. The other factor is what kind of environment are you in? Because if you have a growth mindset, but you're in a fixed mindset environment, it's not going to work because the company doesn't want you to grow. The company just wants you to stay static and do what you do and not expand and not grow. So if you have a growth mindset, you also need to be in a growth mindset environment. And as leaders in Hawaii, that's kind of your, as we say, kuleana, because if you want people with a growth mindset, you have to set up an environment that embraces the growth mindset and not try to force them to have a fixed mindset, which is a real bummer. It's going to kill their growth mindset. The second point, and I'm asking you to pass out the straws right now. I have a little audience participation for you. So, I want every one of you to get a straw here right now. So first, let me tell you about Toyota. Toyota has this concept of you go, if something is wrong on the factory floor, you go and you see what's happening on the factory floor, right? You don't just read reports. You don't just look at executive summaries. You actually go and watch the factory floor so you can see firsthand, not just statistics. Now, I'm asking all of you to start breathing through the straw. Breathe through the straw. All right, so now, it is one thing to go and see the factory floor. I have a friend named Martin Lidstrom. And Martin Lidstrom was, this is a very funny picture. Look at me, I'm in Hawaii. Yeah, this is not New York anymore. So Martin Lidstrom had this pharmaceutical client, and where's your straw? Come on, get with it. So he had this client, a pharmaceutical company, and this is a very funny picture. I should take a picture from up here. The client said, we want to get closer to the customer. So when you hear the word closer to the customer, it's another $5 million McKinsey project that they're going to have focus groups and questionnaires and all this kind of stuff. So what he did instead is he took the executive team of the pharmaceutical company, he put them in a room like this. He gave them all straws and he said, now you breathe through the straw. And at the end of a few minutes, because it's not the easiest thing to do, right? At the end of the few minutes, he said, you wanted to be closer to the customer. I made you into the customer. Because this is what it's like to have asthma. You're living as if you're breathing through a straw your whole life. You want to be closer to the customer. Be the customer. So if you're working for Toyota, you don't just go to the factory floor. You actually take home a Sienna. You see what it's like to have a Sienna, to have 2 strollers, 2 baby bags, 2 kids and all that. So you have to be the customers, and great leaders be the customers. So now for each of your businesses, can you ever try to be the customer? It means, Maybe you have to enroll online or transfer housing, or you have to do something. You have to be, I mean, how many of you, like honestly, how many of you enjoy CAPTCHA? Right? I mean, I don't know about you, but whenever I see this like 3x3 matrix and it says find all the buses in this matrix, I can never, I mean, a bus is not that hard to miss. I don't know how come I always get CAPTCHA wrong. I have never completed a CAPTCHA the first time. So like if you don't like it, why do you make your customers do that to be CAPTCHA? So the message is, if you want to be a great leader, at the very least, go and see, but even better, go and be. Number three is that many organizations, particularly successful ones, they like to work forward. This is what we've done. This is what we've been successful at. This is what we're good at. And this is what we want to continue to do. So now we just need to find customers who want to do and want to buy what we sell. That's working forward. Working backward is you look at the customer and you make your processes, your innovation, your production, you match what they want to do, not what you want to do. And I'll give you a very good negative example. So wrap your mind around this. In 1975, Kodak invented digital photography. Now think about that. Kodak invented digital photography. Yeah, like raise your hand if you use a Kodak digital camera today, right? You do. keep sucking on that straw. So what happened was this engineer created a digital camera in 1975 for Kodak. And can you imagine that guy going to the management of Kodak saying, I figured out a way that people don't have to buy our film anymore. Wow, make me the hero, right? People don't have to buy film, they don't have to buy paper, they don't have to buy any of that. They just take a digital photo. But see, Kodak was working forward. They said, we're a chemical company. We put chemicals on film, put chemicals on paper. Now we just have to get people to buy our chemicals. That's working forward. Working backward is, we're not a chemical company. We are a preservation of memories company. Our business is to help people preserve their memories. We help people preserve their memories with chemicals right now. But imagine the advantages of digital preservation of memories, because you can go to Hawaii and you can take all the pictures in front of the Duke Kahanamoku statue. You can go to Pipeline and you can go to Ted's Bakery, which I highly recommend, or Foodland, I highly recommend too, or Roy's. You can do all those things. You take all your pictures, you go home, you take it to the film development drugstore or the lab, and 2 weeks later, oh shit, I had the lens cap on the whole time. I don't have any preserved memories. That's the disadvantage of chemically preserving memories, right? So I guess I'm trying to tell you that you've got to work backwards. If you're an educational institution, yeah, you may have had big buildings, you'd have big lectures, you had this kind of testing, you had this kind of certification, all that. That's working forward. That's, Harvard was created in, 1810, and that's what we've done, and that's how we're going to do it. Now we got to find people who want to be at Harvard. Well, you should work backwards from what people want, as opposed to what you've been doing and like to do. So work backwards. Number four is that you have to, as a leader, you have to eat what you cook, which means that if you are Roy Yamaguchi of Roy's Restaurants, you sure as hell better like pulehu ribs. Because if you don't like pulehu ribs, Roy, who is going to like pulehu ribs? You have got to eat what you cook. If you see that a CEO of a hardware company isn't using his or her computer, something is fundamentally flawed, right? Everybody should be using the product that they use. I mean, there are times And listen, there's no bigger fan of Apple than me, but there are times I look at what Apple does and I say, have you guys lost your minds? I mean, like, does Tim Cook have a personal concierge that charges his phone once a day? Or like if you have an Apple Watch, you know that an Apple Watch can go roughly 24 hours, right? Good, best, not, okay, I'm being generous. Let's say 18 hours. So here's the very interesting thing. Let's say an Apple Watch can go 18 hours. And now they're saying, oh, the new Apple Watch can track your sleep patterns. Okay, so you're going to wear your watch all day, then you're going to wear it to sleep, to track your sleep patterns, but it cannot go 24 hours. How are you going to track your sleep patterns? You're either going to charge your phone, charge your watch, Tim Cook, or you're going to track your sleep patterns. You cannot do both because the watch doesn't last that long. And these are the kind of things like maybe Tim Cook has 2 watches. Or maybe he doesn't have sleep apnea or something, but I refuse to believe that he eats his own food. You've got to eat your own food. Number 5 is, as a leader, you have to set the standard for using all the weapons that are available to you. Every single weapon that you can. And the very best example right now is, of course, AI. So how many of you are like, fully embraced AI, use AI all the time? Well, I hate to tell you, but if you're afraid of AI because AI is going to take your job, AI is not going to take your job. It's someone who can use AI better than you is going to take your job. So you got to be the person who can use AI better than everybody else, not the person who's in denial. And I'm going to show you something. This is contrary to my wisdom that you should try to never do a live demo in a presentation because lots of things can go wrong. And I'm going to show you something. I mean, if you think about it, 2 equal people, one with a calculator, one without, who's going to win? 2 equal people, one with a computer, one without, who's going to win? 2 equal people, one with AI, one without, who's going to win? And let me show you an example here. So this is a window that has ChatGPT. I make a lot of speeches. I need to make a lot of PowerPoint presentations. I use Canva for that, but I also use ChatGPT. So now, if you took 2 equal speakers who's trying to make custom speeches for everybody, and one can use AI and one cannot, we're going to see who's going to win. So what I'm going to do is, I had a speech earlier for the students, right? And I'm going to show you. So I'm going to make ChatGPT make me a PowerPoint presentation. So I click on the plus, and I'm going to upload 2 things. I'm going to upload my logo for the podcast, the one with Jane Goodall picking up the lice. So I'm going to add the logo, and then I'm going to add the UH logo. So now UH logo, and remarkable people. Now, this is the prompt I'm going to use. This is a very long prompt compared to what most people do. So I'm telling it, make me a presentation. I want a black background, white text. I want Arial as the font. I want the first slide to say how to be indispensable, 90-point font. I want, because that's a long sentence, I want it to wrap to the next line. And I want the UH logo on top of it. Then I have 11 points in this speech. I want it to go from 1 through 11. I want the 11 points to be 60 points. And I also want it to wrap so it doesn't go outside of the slide. And then I want it to place my Remarkable People logo on the bottom right of each slide. And these are the 11 points. And finally, make the last slide a black blank slide. So this is the prompt. I paste it in, and this is the part where I hope it works because live demos have a tendency not to always work. But anyway, I mean, for those of you, how many of you have to make PowerPoint slides? Okay, so now you can understand that usually you're like, you're futzing around with PowerPoint, you're trying to figure out, how do I make a master slide? How do I get a black background? How do I pick a font? How do I make sure that every line is on the same line so when you click, it doesn't shift up and down, right? How do I make it so it's perfectly numbered? How do I do all that kind of stuff? And then, you get it right for one slide, and then you got to try to replicate it. But then if you make it wrong, then you got to go change everything and all that. And I'm trying to give you this whole diatribe because I'm stalling while ChatGPT is figuring this out. Okay, so now it's finished, and I'm going to download it. So this is the PowerPoint that ChatGPT built. UH logo, title page, how to be indispensable. These are the 11 points. These are the 11 points. This is the last slide that is blank and black, right? So what I'm trying to tell you is that as I was trying to stall and let ChatGPT do its thing, it made this presentation. And it ended with a blank slide. So that, come on, let's be serious here. Who could have done that in 30 seconds with PowerPoint? And that is just a sign of, if you are a leader, you gotta be doing stuff like this. It's not only for your own personal efficacy, but it's also because everybody working for you is going to say, my God, the guy or the gal I work for really has embraced AI. He or she is at such a tremendous advantage. I got to embrace AI too. So that's an example. You go to all your AI weenie friends and you say, okay, I'm going to show you how I can make a PowerPoint presentation in 30 seconds. I bet you cannot, and you will win. So. Okay, so now let's get back to the slideshow, and I have yet to figure out how to actually start at number 5 instead of starting at the beginning. I know there's a way, but so we're gonna have to just go here. Okay, so use all your weapons. Number 6. Number 6 is you have to send the right signals. As a leader, you need to know and you need to think about the signals that you are sending. Now, one of the things that I figured out is let's say you're a taxi cab company, all right? And you're trying to figure out how you compensate your drivers. So plan 1 is, we'll pay them per hour. And the signal you're sending to your cab drivers is, take the longest way around Manhattan, because the longer the drive, the more you get paid. On the other hand, you say, we're going to pay you per ride, not per hour. Then people are going to take all these shortcuts and take a lot of chances to get more rides. And so I'm not saying one way is the right or the wrong way, but you just have to figure out, what are the signals you're sending. If you tell an executive staff, I want you to build a great company that's going to last forever, that has permanence, has value. But by the way, I'm going to compensate you with a quarterly bonus. Those two signals are in complete opposition. Either we make as much sales as we can in 90 days, or we build for the future and the long-lasting company. Those two things are kind of mutually exclusive. You've got to figure out which signal you're sending. Number 7 is I interviewed the first female CEO of IBM. Her name is Ginny Rometty. And she told me that at the end of her tenure at IBM, she figured out that there were thousands of jobs that no longer should require a college degree. I realize I'm saying that in a college, but she found out, and she looked at the jobs at IBM, and they tracked it, and they figured out that the people with college degrees did no better than the people without college degrees. So she removed the college degrees. And I will tell you, I worked for Steve Jobs, and this is back in the 80s before, Me Too was a thing. And if you looked around the executive staff of Steve, half of the direct reports of Steve were women back then. The person who ran the factory, the person who ran marketing, the person who ran finance, all women. I can honestly tell you that Steve, for all his assholeness, he was an asshole to everybody. A consistent asshole is not a bad thing. And he did not care about your creed, your color, your sexual orientation. He didn't care about any of that. All he cared about was whether you were good or not. And you can deal with that. That is an atmosphere. I'm not saying you should be an asshole, but I'm saying that if you're going to be an asshole, be a mission-driven asshole. Because I've worked in Silicon Valley for 40 years. I'm an expert in assholes, not in a proctological sense, but basically there are two kinds of assholes in the world. One asshole is about himself. It's me, myself, and I. I can think of a large electric car company that would embody that kind of asshole. The other kind of asshole is like, I'm an asshole because I want to create the best computer possible. And you either help me with that or you get out of my way. I'm going to run you over. That's the Steve Jobs kind of asshole. So be a mission-driven asshole, but focus on skills. That's all that really matters. Now, as a university, I would say that means that you have to give your students the skills. That's the most important thing. Number eight, I interviewed a guy named Stanley McChrystal. He was a general in the US Army. He ran the Allied forces in Afghanistan. And he told me, Guy, one thing that most commercial entities do, they never purposely stress test the organization. And if you want to be a great leader, you need to stress test your organization before the crisis actually happens. And as a metaphor, he said, you want to stress test your organization, your IT staff is telling you, we have triple, double redundancy, we have cloud sharing, we have AWS, nothing can happen to us, no denial of service, nothing can happen, everything is good, we're triply backed up, we have uninterruptible power supplies, everything is great. Stanley McChrystal said, okay, go into the server room and pull one plug out and see what happens. It's metaphorically, go and pull the plug of the server and see what happens. That's the true stress test, not because some IT professional says, yeah, no worry, bro, we got this covered. Pull out the server plug. Stress test the organization. Number nine are the three words that you never, ever hear most leaders say, which is, I don't know. I mean, is it so hard to say, I don't know? The beauty of saying, I don't know, is that it implies that when you say, I know, you should be believed. Because if you say, I don't know, then people say, huh, this person can distinguish, and he can say, or she can say, I don't know. So when that person says, I do know, you should believe that person. So I think I don't know is the most powerful three words that a leader can say. The second most powerful three words is probably, I am sorry. Also three words you never hear uttered by leaders. So if you can say, I don't know, and I am sorry, you're destined to be a great leader. And number 10 is a lesson that I learned from a psychologist at Harvard, the embattled Harvard University. Elizabeth Langer told me that people today spend so much time trying to make the perfect decision using AI and big data. We obsess about making the perfect decision because then we assume that once you make the perfect decision, the rest is easy. The older I get, the more I realize that making a good decision is not that hard. It's implementation that's hard. And so she told me, Guy, what you got to do is you take your best shot, you make your best decision, and from then on, you focus on making that decision right. Because there's no such thing as a perfect decision. There's no such thing as a decision that's going to be easy. You take your best shot, and then it's all about implementation. Don't be second guessing yourself. Don't be making yourself crazy. Don't be changing your mind all the time. Take your best shot and make your decision right. And for those of you who are surfers, I'm going to show you a little surfing video here. How many of you surf? So much of surfing is waiting for the right wave, right? So you got to sit in the right place, catch the right wave, take off at the right time, in the right direction, stand up the right way, walk to the nose the right way, back off, get off the board. Everything has to be right. And much of surfing is waiting and trying to doing the right thing. Well, there are times in surfing when you sit in the wrong place, you catch the wrong wave, or you have no control and a wave catches you. And then the question is, what do you do? Because it's no longer time to make the right decision. That decision has been made. And I'll show you this picture, this little video. So this woman is sitting in a longboard competition. She's trying to figure out a way to sit. She sits in the wrong place. She's about to get crushed. But what does she do? She turns her board, she stands up, and she gets a ride out of what could have been a very ugly situation. That happens to be my daughter, so that's how I got that video. I mean, I could not have done that, I could tell you right now. So, but I saw that, I said, you know, that is a metaphor, right? She was trying to make the right decision, pick the right wave, take off at the right time, right direction, right everything. But the wrong wave, she sat in the wrong place, everything was wrong, but she still got a ride out of it. And that's how life is, that you have to take your best shot and make your decision right. So these are my 10 recommendations for how you can be a remarkable leader based on 250 interviews with remarkable people and 40 years of hand-to-hand combat in Silicon Valley. And that's what I'd like to pass to you. Thank you very much. We're taking Q&A. So,
Maybe a couple questions?
wait, so as I told you, or did I? I can't
you did.
remember.
You did.
I am deaf. I have a cochlear implant. I cannot really hear most people when they ask from the audience. So you're going to ask, and if I cannot understand, she's going to repeat it to me. I lost my hearing because I listened to so many shitty pitches in Silicon Valley. It's an occupational hazard. It's like an OSHA thing. So yeah, I lost my hearing about 4 years ago, and I could tell you something. If you have to lose a sense, deafness is probably the way to go, because with a cochlear implant is a miracle. It takes you from being deaf to just having really lousy hearing. But you know, if you're blind, right? If you have pancreatic cancer, you're going to die. If you have ALS, you're going to die. Nobody died from being deaf. And I'd rather be deaf than dumb, because there's no implant for stupidity, right? So I'm just telling you, I'm deaf, okay?
Okay, great. So a couple of questions. Anyone have a question?
So your role at Canva has an interesting title. Can you tell us how that came to be?
Yeah, so you should travel around with me, because your voice I can hear. A lot of voices, it's just the pitch and the tenor. So I have been the chief evangelist of Canva for about 10 years, and I gotta explain a lot of things to answer this question. So the word evangelism has the Greek roots, and it means bringing the good news. So I bring the good news as an evangelist of Canva and Macintosh. So first there was Jesus, and then there was a 2,000-year gap, and then there was Guy and the Macintosh division with evangelism. So Jesus brought the good news of eternal life. Guy and the evangelists in the Macintosh division, we brought the good news of productivity and creativity. So that was the good news of Macintosh. The good news of Canva, as all of you know, is that Canva has democratized design, right? So you don't need to buy Photoshop. You don't need to learn Photoshop. You don't need to spend 10 minutes booting Photoshop. You don't have to stare at that blank screen with 500 tools around the edge, not knowing what the hell is any of this doing, and what's a mask, and what's this, and what's that. So anyway, so I'll tell you the truth of how I got this job. Now you would think, okay, so Guy, because you're so visible in technology, you know, there are hundreds and hundreds of companies trying to get you to help them and, you know, blah, blah, blah. And you did a really scientific analysis of return on equity and internal rate of return and liquidity and all that kind of stuff. You want to believe that, God bless you. Let me tell you the truth. So the truth is that the person who was helping me with social media was using Canva very early, 11 years ago. Canva saw on Twitter, now X, the Nazi platform. So anyway, the people at Canva saw that I was using Canva on Twitter to make graphics. It was really my social media person. So it just happens that I happened to notice that mention from the Canva people, mentioning me public, saying, Guy, you know, we see you using Canva. And I happened to see that. So I went to my assistant and I said, is Canva what you use to make our graphics? And she said, yes. I said, well, do you like it? She said, yes. And I said, you think I should help them? Because I'm, you know, fat, dumb, and happy. You think I should help them? She said, yeah, you should probably help them. That's how it went down. That was my due diligence. That was everything. That was literally, that was it. There's no analysis, no nothing. And she just, so the lesson there is when you work with somebody who really knows what they're doing, you should listen to them. And thank God for Peg Fitzpatrick, because she told me to help Canva, and someday Canva is gonna be a humongous donor to the UH Foundation. I don't want you to name anything after me. I just want a parking pass for my son. What else?
Throughout your life, what do you say when you have to make a decision? You said make a right decision, make the decision right. But what do you feel like you optimized for most of the time, and how has that evolved throughout your life?
I wish I could tell you that I have had a life plan and that I was optimizing for career potential, financial return, you know, anything rational. Basically, my life has been going from one thing to another that I fell in love with. I fell in love with Macintosh. I fell in love with software. I fell in love with social media. I fell in love with Canva. I fell in love with podcasting. And I fall in love and I pursue, and I'm just telling you what I did. I'm not recommending you this career path, all right? But if you want if you want to think that I'm really a smart guy and I planned it out, let me tell you my career path quite honestly. I'm born and raised in Kalihi Valley, right? Kalihi elementary school teacher tells my parents to put me into Iolani because I have potential to go to college, and you know, you should get him in a college prep school. I get into Iolani. To this day, I don't know why I applied to Stanford. I for sure don't know how I got in, because I know today I could not get into Stanford. I'm so old that back then, being Japanese American, you were considered an oppressed minority. So the standards were lower for me, right? That's how I got into Stanford. So now I get into Stanford, and I got to California. And I got off that airplane and I said, this is it, Guy. This is where you were meant to be. Because there's like Hewlett and Packard and Atari and Intel and National Semiconductor, and people had these magnificent homes, and they had these German cars, and they were beautiful blondes. I said, Guy, this is where you belong on this earth. Now, going a little bit backwards now, you might ask, so Guy, what were your motivations in life? And this is like that movie where Sandra Bullock is in the beauty contest, and she, part of being in a beauty contest is, what are your top concerns? And you're supposed to say, clean water for everybody, economic equality, a life without fear. And I'll tell you that when I was at Iolani, I was catching a bus from Kalihi Valley to Iolani. I got robbed once at Farrington, the Farrington King Street bus that goes into the valley. I also got robbed at Kaimaki High School bus stop across the Iolani. I got robbed twice. And one of our family friends gave me a ride in his 911. And then in college, my roommate was a very wealthy person. And I went home with him once. And you have to understand, you're coming from Kalihi Valley, okay, where you're driving a Toyota Corona, and this is before Toyota Corona was a good car. This is, okay. So now, Guy from Kalihi Valley gets off this airplane in Phoenix, Arizona. My roommate's father picks us up in a Rolls Royce, drives us to his house. His house, the backyard of his house is the Arizona Biltmore golf course. We go out to dinner at the Biltmore. His mother and father drive separately. His mother asked me to drive her home because she's tired in her car. Her car is a Ferrari Daytona. And I'm telling you, I'm being completely honest, that being robbed twice and driving a Ferrari and riding a Porsche was my motivation in life. I didn't want to change the world, I just wanted to change the car. I wanted to buy a German or Italian car, and I wanted to live someplace where I wouldn't be hijacked on the bus. And then, so that was my motivation. And then, it's a very long answer to your question, but I could tell you one more story. So one day, after I kind of made it, I had a 911. So I'm driving this 911, and all people who drive Porsches, they're inherently a bit of an asshole, right? Because you got to prove you're an asshole before they let you buy a 911. So I'm at this intersection in Menlo Park on El Camino. And I look to my left, and there's this car with 4 teenage girls. And they're looking at me, they're smiling at me, they're making eye contact, right? And I'm thinking, Guy, you have truly arrived. It's because of your work at Apple. You are the CEO of a hot Silicon Valley startup. You make speeches. You've written books. Even teenage girls know who you are. You're like the Justin Bieber of Silicon Valley, right? So the girl in the front seat, she goes like that to roll down the window. She obviously doesn't have a Porsche, because in a Porsche, you press the button. You don't roll down the window. I put down the window. The girl leans out and she says, "Are you Jackie Chan?" And ever since that day, one of my most important goals in life is that someday Jackie Chan is in his S-Class or his Rolls Royce, and he's in Beijing or Hong Kong or wherever the hell Jackie Chan lives, and he pulls up to a stoplight, and there's 4 teenage girls to his left. They're smiling, they're making eye contact, and they figure, I'm Jackie Chan. Of course they know who I am. The girl puts down the window, leans out and says, "Are you Guy Kawasaki?" That's my goal in life. I hope that didn't shake you up too much. What else?
One more question? One?
In a recent podcast, I think Ed Zitron, I
Yeah.
feel like that was the first time you had disagreement with
Yeah.
your guest over AI. Any different thoughts about it?
Yeah, I had a guest named Ed Zitron, who is a tech journalist, and he thinks basically open AI or ChatGPT is one big Ponzi scheme, hype, or, like it's not exactly useful. And I must say that we are about 180 degrees away from each other there, because I hesitate to tell you this, but I think that AI is the biggest deal I have ever encountered in my career. Bigger than internet revolution, bigger than social media, bigger than personal computing. I mean, what could make a PowerPoint presentation in 30 seconds like that? You tell me how you could have done that before, right? And I use it every day in my writing. I use it to check my grammar, check my facts. I give it paragraphs and I say, rewrite this paragraph better for me. Help me eliminate the passive voice. Help me eliminate adverbs, because I hate adverbs. Adverbs is a sign of a weak mind. And I do all that, and then I'm writing this book called Think Remarkable, and one of my concepts is that one of the ways people become remarkable is they make a really big career change. They switch from, one thing to another. So I was looking for examples, so I asked ChatGPT, give me examples of people who have made humongous career changes and been very successful. And it says Julia Child, and I said, what? And Julia Child, until her 30s, worked for the OSS. In other words, she was a spook. Julia Child was a spook until her 30s. And then she moved to Paris and fell in love with French cooking, and that's how Julia Child became the French chef. I would have never found that example. Like, who would have I asked? Where could I have gone and said, give me examples of people who made big career changes, and 30 seconds later gives me 6 of them like that. And there's no doubt in my mind that ChatGPT has made me a much better writer. And my take on this is that I think that my moral obligation to my reader is to produce the best book I can to help them learn as much as they can. That's different than saying, my reader expects me to write the best book that I can without any help. You don't care what kind of help I got. What do you care? You just care that the book is good. And if I had to use ChatGPT, if I had to rub 2 sticks together, what do you care? You just want a great book, right? And I feel that's my moral responsibility. And I don't want to scare you too much, but I really think that ChatGPT may be the only thing that can save society. Or not ChatGPT, but AI is the only thing that can save society. And if you ever want to see what I mean, you go home and you ask ChatGPT, should America teach the history of slavery to its students? And ChatGPT will give you 6 answers why it should. And then if you follow up and you say, well, what about if white people read that and they feel guilty and offended because you're bringing up their past? Are you going to psychologically harm them? And ChatGPT will say, yes, there is that danger, but on the other hand, only by discussing it and teaching it can we learn to avoid it. Okay, now, go to Tallahassee, Florida. Ask Ron DeSantis the same question, and you tell me who is sentient and who is not. I guarantee you. You can tell my political leanings. Between you and me, I think that Hawaii, Washington, Oregon, and California should join Canada. And instead of Canada being the 51st state, we should be the 11th, 12th, 13th, and 14th, whatever Canada has. They don't call, what do they call them? They don't call them states.
Provinces.
And we call it Calinada. Gavin Newsom president. Oh, anyway.
Another round of applause for Rob.